Well, greetings for another live stream. The actual high point of this live stream, well, not the high point, I shouldn't say that, because if I played T and Do's information purely, then that would have to be the high point of this particular live stream for those that want to know the way I think about that. But the primary focus on this live stream, I was thinking to put on the fireballs that have been happening. And there's a chart on this website. Actually, I was going to try to, I was just going to put it in here. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got out to lunch as usual in terms of keeping to a schedule. But I definitely want to go get that. And I'm going to call it fireballs. And in fireballs, I want to have an image to start with. Huh. Because what these fireballs have done is, let me see if I can actually do two things at the same time. I doubt it. Is they're showing a pattern, and I've documented that pattern in my book. So I'm gonna toot my horn just for a second here, and people can yell at me if they want to for doing it, but I'll have to read the back of my book and how that started with 2013. From my perception, that was the biggest start, because I missed how many fireballs there were before that. I knew of some of them. Well, I did know of a few, and it's interesting. But I think the ones that we recently had just over Puerto Rico, one, and other places, Michigan, Wisconsin, Northern Italy, Cyprus, Aegina, let's see. It was Madison, Wisconsin, was on the 7th of January. The 1st of January was Northern Italy. They called it a meteor. Some of them did break up like a meteor. The one they call a meteor broke up, and some they call a meteoroid. This is just all these different names for it. It can all be, because there are meteor showers, of course, but these stand out. They're close. They're like, they're thought to be as big as a car by the time they're in our atmosphere. And the 17th was Puerto Rico. And the 19th was in Greece, and then 21st in Cyprus, and 11/24 of last year was I don't have the location on that one. Anyway, so let me find it so that there it is. I don't know why that took so long to load. Guess I made it too big. Also, I'm waiting for it to load here. I'm going to add my I will put myself down there, my vehicle, throwing around my vehicle, throwing around the courtyard. That's where we are right now. We're in the courtyard stage. And we're all members of the court if we want to be, by our search for truth. Anyway, I don't know if you can actually see this and read it. It doesn't look like very good on my my screen there. Hi, DJ Taconic and Kate's Biz and yeah, it's not a video that I've got up. I don't know if you're talking about another video. Oh, okay. You just told me that the video is up. You're getting it. Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. I'll just have to leave it over here. Sorry, I want to be able to read it myself. So, see the pattern here that if you can't read it, I'll just read from the beginning of it. In the bottom left corner, it says 2006, and it shows a green line, and that green line represents, what does that represent again? The green line represents events with 10 or greater number of reports and less than 25, less than or equal to 25. So that's just the amount of reports the colors are. So you've got more reports happening. Oh, so they're measuring the reports by this. Well, it's the same thing. It's the same. That means more people are seeing them, okay? But I don't know and more people are reporting them because, plenty of people probably don't, when they see something like that, they don't report it. So, but anyway, it's not important. That's not important how many, but showing the pattern of growth that's happening is interesting because let's say the next level is actually, before they do that, let's say the next level is sending us all or different parts of the country or different parts of the world, different formulas of the light, their information, their energy. It's really down to their energy. Their mind is their energy. And so when they're paying attention to us, you can actually probably measure it in some kind of BTUs or something. If we had I don't know, Tiendo never said that, so not that I ever heard. But I mean, that's what it's equivalent to. It's some kind of a measurement of energy. It's not nebulous, a next level older member's mind or a younger member's mind. It's scientifically powerful. So, and they use computer systems, according to Doe. So we can boil it down that they could prepare people to go outside during this time. You know what I mean? They could have, they could help people. They could give the suggestion of, I don't know what they do, how to do it, but the people that are asking will kind of pick up on it. And might come up with their own reasons why they want to do something. It's like that game that I told you about, that the next level taught about, that leaving a thought in the aisle of the supermarket on a specific item, and then seeing if the person that comes by you next pays attention to that. Now, of course, with a student, the strength of that signal is going to be considerably weaker than an older member's strength of their signal in their thoughts. So their thoughts are powerful. But that doesn't mean that the older member came into the spacecraft. That's hovering above us, because there's probably a local one. It seems like there's a local one, and Tindo did talk about that, but they didn't say that it was the case. They said what I remember was that our craft could be engulfed in a next level spacecraft, so that members of the next level could be among us, physical, but we can't see them. And they know how to get out of our way, so that we don't bump into them. Because the student asked that question, I think I remembered, and so that spacecraft itself, I tried to imagine how that could work. If a physical spacecraft that you could bump into was literally on top of our house, and it was, they didn't say how big it was going to be, right? So that's the key to that. Because when I started to study the Bible materials, the record books is what Doe called them, while I was writing my book, I got to the New Jerusalem description of being approximately 1,360 miles square, is the way that is described, which is interesting, as there have been some square sightings of the sun. I don't know if it was the sun or what. No, I think it was like a asteroid or something. I even forget what it was, but it was something in the heavens that somebody took a picture of. NASA took a picture of. Now, they could have been playing with us. I'm not saying that everything they do is legit, but the next level does things that are very unusual. Everything they do is unusual, and they don't repeat the same thing that often. The fireballs they do repeat, but even the fireballs may be different, because those fireballs might be actually what's bringing that mind from the next level. I can imagine that that's possible. That it could be a remote control, or something could be put on a meteor or an asteroid or a comet, to break down as it goes or something. Because that's what comets do. And the meteor showers, a lot of the meteor showers are said to be, by the scientists on Earth, said to be the tails of comets. And so the idea that the next level, seeds the planet, and they put, like they put an abundance of nickel or silver inside a meteor, and then they throw it onto the Earth, and it becomes a mine for the humans. See, that's the kind of jobs that you would have to do if you were on board a spacecraft on a next level crew. Well, so I think, what I started to say right away when I started the live stream was that I wanted to put a focus on the fireballs that have happened. And I'm going to read the list again before I go back to this chart. But it was on 1/1/2020, it was in northern Italy. They called it a meteor. And each of these, they had some video footage for a lot of these that, like I think on that one, it showed it breaking up. So I got to give you the link. Here's the link. I'm going to copy and paste it. Hopefully that can work. So I don't have to take the time to play it right here. This way I give the credit where credit is due at the same time. Okay, so this is something Skywatch. Let's see what it's called. Skywatch Media News on YouTube. And so what I was talking about also was that in my book I documented. Let me go to my book here now. I should have did this before. I'm sorry. I never know where I'm going to go exactly, so. Fox and Barrett, hello. And yeah, so anyway, well, yeah, you guys can look at that link if you can. But so then you know what I'm talking about. I don't have to go through a lot of descriptions about the different videos that they had of the fireballs. And but they were in Italy and Cyprus and Puerto Rico. Just had one, and it followed the earthquake. So people were, the way it was reported, that people were wondering if it was an omen of more earthquakes. And they might not be wrong. I mean, it's something that we definitely have to grapple with, and that's not like the fun part of the task of talking about Tiando. Is that, but the reality is that nothing's lost. Even when we lose our vehicles, nothing is necessarily lost. It's only lost if we haven't met the bar of being included in the grades in school that the next level wants to save for a future opportunity. And however they do that. And I mean, when you're the onlooker and you're dealing with somebody else's trauma, it's great, of course, to send them things and go down there or whatever people want to do to support the islands or anybody that's going through a natural disaster. But I have to recognize from T and Do's mind that since they're far more objective than I am in this human vehicle, accelerating those spirits to their next opportunity. We used to call it, when we squashed a bug, we didn't squash a bug for no reason. But, like if a mosquito or something was flying around, you squashed it. They called it accelerating it. But I don't know. That might be a joke. I don't know if it's a joke. But they never talk that way about humans that I can hear. But Doe did, though, in USA Today information ad. He said that the consequences of the weeds taking over the garden and devouring one another, the weeds against the weeds, is that I know I had it in my mind, but I lost it. Oh, that it accelerates people to what they believed. So you get what you believe. And I used to try to figure out what that meant, because I get what you believe. What do you mean you get what you believe? What if I believe I'm going to heaven? Do I get to go to heaven when I die? But that's not. But believing in a word isn't what gets you there. It's what you do that shows what we believe. So you have to work for it. It's what you work for. It's what you worship. Those said the meaning of the word worship really should be work for. And of course, you can see then where the misinformation to the Christians was that no, you don't need to work for it. In fact, you shouldn't work for it because Jesus did it for you. Like that makes any sense in any kind of a real world situation. What he did for us was show us the path to take. That meant overcoming the world and rising out of our vehicles, being the controllers. So taking over the horse. And doing so through the teachings of the present older member. And the most present older member said for right now that the overall, Doe, through Junodi's writings, that Doe I know was a part of, was the source of, said that the overall requirement to go with dough when it's all done, not just doesn't mean go with the way he meant go with him meant actually be with him on that spacecraft. But now what it means is potentially I'll still be with him on that spacecraft right now. But also, but for a lot of people, what's more in store is being saved for a future opportunity to overcome the human condition. So, and by learning the formula for that of separating from the world, and by changing, by not having any of the addictions to substances or behaviors that aren't, well, I would say necessary for life, but that becomes a philosophical, what is life? Because I mean, sexuality for fulfillment of all parties involved is, people say that people live for that. Some people, and more than others, but from those point of view, it's an addiction. And even if it's an addiction that's once a week or once a month, or it's that much of an addiction, I guess, if it needs to continue to happen, if the person can't stop it from. But then again, I don't know what the limits are. It's like once an addiction, always an addict. No, but always aware of that addiction drawing us back into the world, or more of use of that addiction, more application of that, more participation with that addiction. Yes, that I believe that's the more we vibrate on those behaviors and all the associated behaviors with that. And in this world, it can be very hard to avoid a lot, especially if you were away from your sexuality for a long time, like I was, to where just to see a woman dancing suggestively, which almost a lot of dancing is, was stimulating. But now I can watch that and not feel any stimulus that I'm aware of. But I don't know how much stimulus can be happening that I'm just not aware of. It's just I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling that little buzz that people get. And from it. A lot of people probably don't even recognize that they're getting that buzz. It's just so normalized. But then the people that were, got into it a lot, they can recognize it if they then dropped out of it. So then a little tiny bit goes a long way, in terms of stimulating the thoughts that go with it. So anyway, because that's one of the big characteristics of the human kingdom that needs to be overcome. And why it's not a moral issue, T said, it's because the members of the next level don't have the plumbing even for propagation or satisfaction from the behaviors. I'm not a prude, by the way. I'm just not choosing not to use terminology that the Doe wouldn't use during these broadcasts. Because some listening may be trying to overcome the characteristics, and so the less imagery, the better in descriptions of things. But for anybody that's kind of new to this, which I don't know if there is anybody, but listens to it later, I try to cover different bases. So the fireballs that we just see the chart here for shows like a events with more than 100 reports. So there were hundreds of reports, and then there were events in the purple. The red is hundreds of reports, more than hundreds of reports. The purple is events with 50 or more, no, 50 or less numbers. Less than 100. No, 50 or more, I guess. I guess with that arrow going that way. I don't know why I'm doing my dyslexic thing, because I know those symbols. And then events with 25 or to 50 is generally numbers of reports is the orange, or the I guess that's orange, right? And then the events with 10 or less to 25, I think that's the way to say it, is the green. And the green has expanded. Now, wouldn't it be funny if the next level member on a crew on a spacecraft had his computer system, and they know what's happening they're actually monitoring these same websites that are talking about fireballs and things on YouTube. And when the person was putting this together, suggested, use green for the ones that would end up looking the biggest growth, because we're in the green time period now. Where green has all its meanings being demonstrated. From the lower forces, from the Green Party, which is kind of like I guess a very left-wing party, which the right-wingers considered to be the communists. I think that's what they would have been called before. The green with the Catholic Church, and how the opposite they are, how they are the biggest demonstration of an organization that is anti-Christ, the Christing. But that's not the limit. The Antichrist is actually the mindset, the misinformation mindset, that there is no next level above human, or that it's a spiritual kingdom, or that it's it's just a bunch of people that are frequencies that are floating around, and that's more misinformation, even though that exists, that there's a frequency network of networks, frequency of thoughts and minds. The discarnate humans are spirits that are what Tyndall called influences, synonymous with the word Mind was the word they used at first. Minds, but there's a difference between, and that's where it relates to the religion records, is that you've got the holy mind, which is the deity's mind. The deities being the above the human beings' mind, their thoughts, their behaviors and ways, their attitudes, their intentions, their love, it's not just thoughts, it's emotions, it's everything. We have those emotions because they do. They created us in their likeness. That's what it said in that writings from Moses, that some of which was distorted, but with the Jesus writings in the four Gospels were not distorted. Well, they were kept. They were not distorted, but except by the interpretation and the making up of things by Paul and other people that made up stuff. That became the distortion. That's the religion. The religion is the distortion of what happened, the reality of what happened. The truth and reality is the same thing. What is true is the reality. But in terms of thinking, I'm not trying to say that truth is the reality of the earth, but I mean it is too. It's what's really happening. It is the same, but we just have to broaden our mind, which may be, I'm not saying that you all aren't doing it. Maybe I'm the only one that's not doing it, to where I'm blabbering, but saying things that, well, never can tell when somebody else might think the same way I do, with limitations and in the ways that I'm less limited. I'm limited all the time compared to T and Do. That's not just a saccharine belief that I have. It's a no. I know it. I know that. I know how many times I thought they would respond a certain way to something, and I found out that I was wrong. Not a lot. I mean, a lot enough, but enough to know that I couldn't second guess them unless they gave a lot of clues or big clues, which all their clues, I think I would consider them big, which I only learned about after I left the group and I re-listened to some of the tapes, the audio tapes. I could see how many things that I just went totally over my head. I missed it totally. I mean, some of it I heard and I remember hearing a lot of it. It's not like it's not familiar. What I'm saying over my head is that I could see that they were talking about things that I was only looking at. Well, my task was, which every student has this task, was to learn to listen. So in other words, when I was sitting in a meeting, I was trying to, the way I did that, they didn't describe how to do that. But they said you wouldn't have any thoughts about trying to interpret what they're saying while they're saying it. And you wouldn't have any thoughts in judgment of what they were saying as they were saying it. And you wouldn't have any thoughts about something else happening outside the world or what's coming up on the menu after this meeting, And all those thoughts would have been distortion and getting less of what was real, what was coming to us at that moment through their minds, through their vocal cords and the words, and through their minds and through their vocal cords, vehicles, the vocal cords of the vehicles. Um, so the way I translated trying to get that control was that I would like hear an echo of every word in my head. So I was hanging on every word. And then when a word stopped, I was just hanging on that word. I was blocking out anything else. I think they helped us do that. They said they ran away our influences from meetings. Otherwise, we might not have gotten that much from the meetings because the influences would have been there, you know. Oh, no, that's ridiculous. Don't pay attention to that. What are you doing here, you know? All the different thoughts that people could have, which they were helped to not have. So it was made into a very controlled environment. And he used to say in the real world, it wouldn't work this way, or something like that. And I used to think, wait a minute, I thought we were preparing to go to the real world. I thought the next level was the most real. But see, she was using the word real in the more literal context of how people in the world were going through lessons with children, with their finances, their careers, their partnerships, you know, their businesses, their the governments, everything, you know, and how all that, you know, substances and what's fun and what's fulfilling and direction plans for the future, you know, dealing with death and health problems, and we didn't have any of that hardly. So we weren't in the real world. We were in a constructed reality. It's a cocoon. It was an isolation. It was a cloistering. That's probably where the ideas came from of a bunch of people being away from the world, living as monks and nuns. That's the way T&O said it. Monks and nuns. But they didn't have inflection the way I just did. That was my vehicle spin on it. A little sarcasm in there. And T&O taught me that's one of the things that would keep me off the spacecraft. Sarcasm is a type of judgment. It's a kind of it's like I don't mean that. I wasn't being sarcastic to you all. I was being sarcastic with the idea. Well, I'm calling it sarcasm. Maybe that's not the best word for it. Anyway, my little spin there on that kind of rates it, I guess, to a degree as a negative, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm overanalyzing it. They didn't say that was going to keep me off the spacecraft, but I'm sure I could, prove them wrong. Because they don't want to be proven wrong. They take the higher side. No, I'm saying that because no one said that to me. If you want me to, he said to me when I told him I wasn't that good. I was, he said, well, if you insist on wanting me to accept that, then I guess I'm going to have to, is what he said. See, he wasn't letting me out easily. I mean, not letting me out of the group easily. I'm not talking about that. Letting me out of raising my standards and drawing on his mind and putting my mind more on where his mind is, like, using the meditations more. If I feel like I'm tempted by something with my vehicle, I could just automatically. I could have actually said, okay, when you feel that happening, to where your eyes are going over to that female, even if it's just the back of their neck or something, and the female that your vehicle is semi-attracted to, anyway, or very attracted to. But when that happens, it would be my job to program my vehicle to say ahead of time, okay, next time that happens, I'm gonna recognize that sign of that. So when I see that neck or with that, flesh or whatever it is, I'm gonna label it with as an influence, as a discarnate, because it works. It doesn't matter how accurate that is. And so you would say, you would think to yourself, influence of sensuality or something like that, because you wouldn't want to get any, get out of here, and then change your focus and say it with force in your head, and project it out. Think of it going to put up that force field, and he would call that making your own solar system. That we are each the central sun in our own solar system. That's what it says in the document, The Power of Goodness. That's in the descriptions of the last few live streams that I've done. The Power of Goodness. And so in that way, then we can label whatever it is. If it's we don't want to eat that sweet because it causes pain in our teeth, and we don't want to have to go to the dentist again. So maybe I'll just not do that sweet. That's something that I have to go through. And so that's a relatively easy one compared to some of the others for me. But for some other people, it might be a very difficult one. And what's hard for me might be easy for them. I'm talking to everybody about that in that regard, because we're all potentially in school and progressing, because we don't know what anybody else is up against, what they've been dealt. I mean, so many people were bred to be the way they are. Look at the people that end up taking over the country and the world. They were bred for that. It's in their blood. Even Obama has like 9 generations away from some English or French king, if I understand correctly, from David Icke's research of the archives that are available in England somewhere. George Bush is just a couple generations, or maybe a few. Joe said a few was 3, I believe, and a couple it was 2, and several was more than 3. I think, unless I got I got the few right. I believe I remember it that way. I could be wrong I can forget. Maybe I'm getting the whole thing backwards, but I don't think so. Some things I seem to still remember pretty well. I can feel when I'm losing memory on something. I hope that's always the case so that I can stop myself. And so, let's see. So talking about, putting up the blank card is part of that blocking of thoughts, so that it's the cue card in like an act in a theater. And they even talked about it as you can think of it as that you're acting, you're putting on. Well, I don't know if they said acting. Well, I talked about it as a game. So in a sense, even in The Power of Goodness, T said, if you want to play this game of positivity and goodness and being in control of the vehicle, using their guidelines that also include the guidelines that Jesus said were the guidelines, and he talked about that they were to follow the Moses guidelines, but Tiendo said the Moses records were distorted. So the first suspects of distortion would be the contradictory things about death. Because what he might have been saying was, you surely shall die, would mean that you'll continue that behavior. And so then you won't grow, you won't be adding next level mind to the strength of your own soul. So then that'll mean that you'll have to eventually be recycled. I know it meant that, but I don't know if it also might have meant, a discipline so that they would take it serious. And because the next levels, they own all the vehicles. And whether we like it or not, they own us. They can wipe out thousands of vehicles with a tsunami, if they want to. And because they know that it's not the vehicles that can graduate into the next level. It's the souls that are filled with next level mind that grow to withstand the lessons in the astronaut training program, going through taking over human vehicles that can graduate into the next level when, in this case right now, when the next time that older members come. But some can still get in the door potentially now because Tiendo taught that there's no, people can grow as fast as they choose to grow. So how do we grow the fastest? Do we off ourselves? No. Do we commit suicide? No. Because we need these vehicles to learn lessons. So that would be like taking an easy way out, thinking that, oh yeah, I can just lose my vehicle. And they've already maybe tried it, and who knows, thought about it before, and that should never be a casual thing to do. I'm not saying it is for anybody, but I guess under enough influences of substances, it can feel pretty dead, I imagine. Or going through the withdrawals, I imagine, can be wanting to die. And for a lot of reasons, people can want to die, right? And And what Tiendo said about that, or through Stamodi's writings, was that they're seeking to escape learning the lessons that can be learned while in the vehicle. And we can conquer everything. The reason why we can conquer everything is because we can reach up for the highest source we can reach, and that would be Tiendo's minds, for help. And as long as we do that and then accept the help that they give us, because let's say they give us help to say, just don't walk down that street anymore. Okay? And then you go and do it, then you're not taking advantage of the help as much as you could. You might be to some degree. So these are the kind of things that is kind of I think is the core of what's important to the overcoming process. Because even if we don't overcome things now, which is in a sense it's giving people an excuse, because I want an excuse. Because I think I need an excuse, or I can't figure out how to not have an excuse. Okay, so maybe that's the reason I'm giving other people those same excuses. But that's not necessarily wrong to happen, because the next level knows that we're not all in the same place and not where they are at in development, and we've got all these influences that that the next level is probably regulating with everybody. Well, even everybody to some degree, or it would be over already. The lower forces would have already created the civil wars in the United States. But geez, so talking about that, I don't know if you know about it, but in Virginia, there were thousands of people that went to the State House to protest the governor's wanting to put into law background checks on certain kinds of firearms and some other regulation on them that the people that have firearms are actually seeing come true exactly what they were fearing, and exactly what the Constitution said they were trying to protect against by the people having the right to bear arms. Now, I'm not in favor of bearing arms to kill other humans with. In fact, that's not next level behavior. Tiendo were against even making weapons that were designed to kill other humans with those weapons. But for hunting, and I'm in favor of having firearms. But I'm not saying that. I owned a couple firearms in 1972. When I moved up to British Columbia, or maybe it was 71, to try to homestead in the mountains, in about 30 miles towards the Wells Gray Provincial, at the base of the Wells Gray Provincial Park. And I was, living there. I lived there for a year before I got deported. For being an American that wasn't legally there, I was there too long. I wasn't allowed to be living there, and they found out that I was somehow. So anyway, So I bought a shotgun, and I bought it wasn't a 30-30, but it was close to that. It was a military rifle, but it had a multiple shot clip on it. But I don't think you couldn't hold it on the trigger, and it wouldn't keep on firing. You just got one shot at a time through it. And I was practicing. I did some, practicing because before I moved to British Columbia with my partner. I studied, hunting deer and gutting them, and I read about it. I didn't study it like in a lab or anything, or actually do it to study it. But and because I remember saying to people, or I remember thinking, or I said it to somebody, because I remember thinking that if I was going to eat meat, I was going to hunt it. I was kind of idealistic as a youth, I guess, in that regard. So I was a complete failure as a hunter for that one season that I did it. And well, there was no seasons there. I mean, it was open season all the time. I mean, there were. Anyway, it was pretty rural. I mean, if there were 100 people living on that road, off that road, I think that would be a lot. Or 30 miles of dirt road into up towards the park. Mountain ridges. Right along the ridge of the mountains. It was a beautiful area, but it wasn't meant to be that this vehicle was supposed to stay there. So anyway, but I've told a story more about that in the past. I'm not going to go through it now, but I mean, anyway, I'm not. There's no justification for violence, but there were provocateurs that were scheduled. That somehow there were 3 people that were writing, or at least one of them was found writing things that were white supremacist things, and that they were looking for the opportunity to actually create an event. And I don't doubt that. And I know that in the past, during certain demonstrations, the government was interested in creating an event because then they could justify bringing in security forces. But I don't think they really want to do that because, and so the governor, I don't know if he did anything like with the National Guard, but he did declare it a national emergency. The fact that there were all these people there right outside the gate, but the national emergency only pertained to inside the governor's the grounds of the. I don't think it was the governor's house, but maybe it was. But see, these are the kind of things that you read in the history books, or happening before the wars break out, right? Because you get people that are ready to rebel, saying, if you're going to have these laws, then you're going to see us in your face with our guns. And so they're getting their own karma. It's sow what you shall reap. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. The weeds will take out the weeds. And that'll leave the righteous behind. And those might be the meek that inherit the earth. And the earth might be used as then a base, the Doe said, for a while before it's made into another garden. In other words, another experiment, another civilizational experiment to where they're allowing the lower forces to influence the people so that they can have the full choices to become like the Luciferians, or they can become members of the next level. I don't like using the word Luciferians because I know a lot of people are using it in all different contexts, and it's thought to be mythology. And that's fine to think of it as mythology, but the mythology didn't necessarily come from somebody's imagination. Parts of it were imaginative, but they were depicting a lot of real events. The kings and queens and princes and princesses and all that were all, and that's what the Greek mythology and the Babylonian and the Roman mythologies all have in common. Those, and the story like Krishna, stories of Krishna is like that too. It's like, everything's symbolic and the lessons are, within the stories, there's morals of the stories. The Chinese have the same thing. But I don't know much about the Chinese, except for the Buddhist Chinese. But like the Tao, I don't know. Tiendo said all the religions came from the next level, so in one way or another, but, there's distortions. So, who knows which ones are more distorted than others, or just distorted in a different way, so that, they don't necessarily have to be more or less distorted. I think once it's distorted, it's misinformation, because you're not getting the real picture anymore. You can't see the literalness of it. Like right now, we can still see the literalness of everything Tiendo taught. We can see their vehicles, what their vehicles look like. We can recognize the kinds of things they said. And then we can, if somebody like tries to say that Doe said this or that, that happened not too long ago. I forgot what it was, but they said that Doe said this, and I sent them a comment. I think it was on that Heaven's Gate Facebook page that I didn't create, but I try to stay with. That people are just putting all kinds of things on there. And where they said that Doe said such and such, and I thought, wow, that doesn't sound. I mean, like if you said that Doe encouraged sexuality, right away, I would know that that was not Doe. But a lot of times it's a more subtle thing than that. That wasn't it. Should have said sensuality. Because sensuality would be actually meant also anger was a form of sensuality. And people can be addicted to being angry. And thinking it's justified. I mean, a lot of those preachers in the religions sound pretty angry when they're, talking about fire and brimstone. I mean, and it's the, but other people don't sound angry. Like Martin Luther King, I don't think he sounded angry but he might have been sometimes. But who are we angry with? That's the key. Whether it's a misinformation, whether it's an emotion that's justified or not. Because anger itself is I don't think is something wrong with that. I think even though T and Do love, even though T said that the next level still loves Lucifer, or maybe she said the chief still loves Lucifer. Doesn't mean that they love his behaviors and ways and what he's teaching and his influence on other people. Maybe they would say that well, that's why they said, the Lord can be wrathful, and wrath is anger. In other words, the Lord gives and takes away. We can't assume that we're on track ever. None of us, no matter what we're, because we can always grow further. But that doesn't mean that we're down in the mouth about it, because that would be, according to T and O, that would be not controlling the vehicle. The vehicle's meant to have a pleasant countenance. Okay, fireballs. See some additional folks here. Fireballs are demonstrating the same thing that they've been demonstrating every year since 2013. Maybe before that, but I wasn't aware of it to this degree. That I became aware on 2013 with the Chelyabinsk meteor over Siberia that broke a whole bunch of windows, smashed in like louver doors on warehouses. Those metal doors were blown in by the impact of the wave that was ahead of that thing. Because it wasn't an explosion, I don't think, that did that. And that happened in, I think, mid-February of 2013. And I couldn't help but, while I was writing my book, reflect on the Tunguska event that happened in, what was it, 1912 or something? I get mixed up on the dates. Anyway, I'm going back to the chat room for a minute here. So this chart here, though, is showing the increasing increase of events. Oh yeah, they said it's events. So that is more fireballs happening. For a second there, I thought that all along. So the but it's showing that some events, the green, were 10 or less people saw those, reported those events. 10 to 25 people reported those events. All right, so so the amount of events for 2013 was 172, and for 2014 was 194. And then look at the jump, then it goes to where it's 243 to 255 from 2015 to 2016. So they're close together. They're like they're in twos. And then there's two in there after that from 2017 to 2018, and they're almost even now. So I wonder if 2019 and 2020 are going to be completely even, or even a little less even. But they're creeping up to each other the whole time, even the two in the beginning. There'd probably be some way to actually, evaluate all that to find, how much of a pattern there is on that screen there. But that wasn't all that happened in 2013, because with the fireballs actually came in two stages. They came in the beginning of the year, and they came, most of these too happened during the time of year that we're in right now, between December and April. And then there was a break. And in 2013, around late March or April, there was a couple of fireballs. I don't know how many there were, but I saw one video of one or two. Maybe I saw actually in total. And one was like in the Ohio Valley, and it started off like going on an angle towards Florida from the Ohio Valley. And I wondered at the time whether that was marking a certain part of the area that this might be signaling where not to live. I don't know. Or to have an escape plan for. I hate to say that. I'm a doomsdayer, but it's just smart, common sense. And Doe demonstrated this when we were in California, and there was that earthquake that actually toppled those freeways on top of people. We weren't in that one, I don't think. Well, we were too far south, and we didn't feel that much of it. I remember the chandelier shaking, and hearing things in the cupboards rattling a little bit, I think. But mostly the chandeliers would shake. And Doe took that seriously. And he felt like he didn't want the classroom to have to function in a city where there could be gas lines breaking, and it could be not enough water for people for several days, or a number of days, for even a long time, or and no ability to go get food, and having shortages of food. That's the problems with being in the cities that are having earthquakes in those areas. Not the earthquake itself necessarily. So he chose not to. He chose to move away at that point. And they went back, of course, several times after that. But and I was with them when we went back, two times actually. But so Doe wasn't taking that as like stay out of California entirely. But he felt like that was the signal from T to not be in that situation. And when we went back, we lived in warehouses. We weren't in houses anymore. I don't know if that had anything to do with and we were in actually campers. We ended up selling all our stuff. But that was, I don't know, that might have been like the fourth time we were in California area, in San Diego area. We were never north of Anaheim. And we were only in Anaheim for in a trailer park for a while with our campers. So, Jesus said, "Go to the mountains." I don't know if he was talking about that for the sake of rivers overflowing and that the coasts would be more, like Jesus said, waves roaring at this time. And we see the reality of that, and that's the benefit of the Green New Deal, that people will, whether they think that humans can fix it or not, the evidence of a changing climate, I think, is apparent. We've definitely seen those changes escalating as well in the 2000s, especially since T and Doe left, since Doe and crew left, and T. So humans naturally want to raise money so that they can build seawalls and things. And so they want everybody, so it's too complicated to tell them, well, since humans always want to take credit for everything anyway, some of the humans, I'm not saying everybody, but the ones that are the leaders in the world, the ones that, make it to where, a lot of people look up to them for solutions to problems. I'm not saying there aren't plenty of solutions to problems, that are happening all the time. Yeah. But they end up becoming, those people end up becoming, they don't have any desire or need to think in terms of that the next level is real and they're actually holding a school here, and that overcoming everything they have is the aim. They can't do that. I mean, it's not that they can't do it, but it becomes almost impossible. It's like Jesus said, it's almost impossible for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. The reason I'm saying almost, because he said, rich man. I don't think he said can't. But then he said, but with his older member, all things are possible. That's why I'm qualifying it. So we can't judge the rich either. Some have given me suggestions on how to get more hits, more likes, and more subscribers, and I don't feel like I think this just allowing the people to come to this live stream or T and Doe's information. And through this live stream to T and Doe's information is what I hope occurs. To me, I don't want to try to make it happen any faster. Because it won't be, not for the reason that it won't be popular for me. The numbers will go up, but the negativity will also go up. And I don't really want to deal with more of it. But But I will as it happens for as long as I can. So I mean, it's probably, it may be inevitable. I don't know how long this vehicle will live, but and how fast the next level wants to move it. But I know they're not. I know this recent December and January has been significantly higher in all ways. I don't remember. Well, there might have been this many fireball reports in 2017 or 18 and 19. Well, I meant to say really was 19. I mean, from all the other things that escalated and are still happening with the earthquake in Puerto Rico after the other earthquakes that were happening in California, and there were lesser, but still swarms of them, and along the from Japan down to Indonesia or New Zealand, actually. There were several swarms of earthquakes, and Alaska down to Mexico as well. And Mexico was the one of the volcanoes that started to erupt again. And Hawaii, of course, but that's a little further back. So that was a 2019 event. I know humans can do things to probably maybe even stimulate a volcano, but the volcano would have had to been being built for a while. Like if they took a nuclear missile and they put it, and they can see like let's say they did that to Yellowstone, where the actual ground has been raising in certain spots. And they know there's magma chambers down there. Maybe they could release that ahead of the time that the next level would do it. But the next level would also, I think, not allow that to happen before they might allow it to happen. Maybe the lake of fire is generated because of what humans do. Maybe they don't even have to set off Yellowstone if that's one of the ones that is considered a super volcano that's been showing signs of exploding. We got Mount St. Helens. Well, since global warming is, well, let me go in the chat room before I talk about that a little bit more. Oh, I see. I've got some questions here. Okay, let me pay attention to the chat room. May I ask? Okay, it's tell you what. May I ask one question about your time with Heaven's Gate? I've read you were with them for 19 years. Why and when did you leave? Yes, I left because I flunked out. I was given a test and I gave in to sexuality. And I was a little too full of myself also, I think. And I had I was a little too pleased with myself, is what I mean by that. And I'd like to be seen as something special. That was another thing that was why I didn't qualify to be on the spacecraft. And I wasn't keeping up with my lessons on control of my vehicle to the degree that I needed to in the department of human sexuality. And it was with myself. I didn't have any relationships with anybody else. I didn't even imagine being with anybody else in the classroom. Even though I was attracted to some of the vehicles, I wasn't allowing myself to really think about being attracted to them. It's just a feeling. I just knew that I was. I didn't have to think about it, and I didn't try to make that happen. But I did suffer when I would be split up from somebody my vehicle was attracted to. I felt like, like somebody that was divorced in a sense. Because just being with certain people was stimulating. And not that I ever, got an erection or anything from it. That never happened. But there was one time where I wanted that to happen. Late at night one time, I was by myself and dealing with wanting a female vehicle to come downstairs so that I could have sex with her. But I didn't have anybody in mind. I wasn't thinking about a specific student. And I didn't imagine any sex acts at that time. But I was fighting back my vehicle's, response to those thoughts. But I wasn't doing anything to stimulate it any further either. Except I wasn't like leaning on something or, to be quite graphic. I want to be graphic because that's the truth. I like to be transparent when it comes to this, even though I don't enjoy talking about it. I left in September of 1994. Okay, so I'll go to the next Fox and Barrett show. He still very much believes in the principles despite having left for whatever reason. It shows in how he frames these lectures. And tell you what it says, I've noticed, which makes me wonder why he left. Okay. And tell you what says, occasionally Sawyer does touch on, Fox and Barrett's show is explaining to tell you what. Occasionally Sawyer does touch on the when and why he left. You are aware that some members were left behind to offer accounting of the events, the logs of the crew. Well, I don't agree that some members were left behind for that purpose. They dropped out or they were dismissed from the classroom, as the case with Mark and Sarah. And the next level, they still wanted to be in service to the next level. And so they let that be known to Doe, who stayed in touch with dropouts if they wanted to stay in touch with them. And they did and were in touch. And so they were offered a task in 1994, and then they were offered to come back in 1994, and they didn't want to. And then when it was time to leave, they didn't tell them what they were up to, but I knew what they were up to because I was there when they talked about laying down their vehicles. And but Mark and Sarah weren't there. And so they're the head webmasters of the Heaven's Gate website. And but they still wanted to be in service, so Doe was working with them, and certain students were working with them to help prepare them to take care of all the logistics and not leave a mess behind, like where the cars would go and what to do with the contents of storage and the audio tapes and the other materials, and they gave them money to pay for the website. I think it was a 5-figure number, dollar number. But that's my understanding. I don't know where I got that from exactly, but so maybe I'm wrong about it. Wow, I got this high-pitched sound in my ear. Seems to be external. Something's going bad, I guess. A transformer of some sort. Maybe my strip? I don't know what that is. All right, so yeah, so they so the next level was taking advantage of the students that wanted to do the task of spreading the information. And there were a number of students that they named, and I was not one of them. And Carlin was not one of them. But they named the individuals that were named Flexody. Well, maybe they did name Flexody and Abelody. But they named Oscody, Riccody, Oscody, Neody, who was Rio, and Mercody and Serafody it was the letter to them that named the other individuals that they wanted to split things up with as being the individuals. Also, that individual whose name was, I forgot now, but he was in Germany at the time or Japan at the time. I'm not sure which. He was also named, and he had never been in the classroom. And Doe suggested he come to the United States. And but he was named as somebody, but it wasn't limited, because the task that we all have, people now as well can have if they want it. If they want to make application to be a candidate for graduation into the next level, is to stand up for T and Doe. And as the individuals that came from the kingdom that created the earth and all its life forms, and maintain that stand until the individual leaves their vehicle, however that happens. So that means that there isn't anybody that the Rio wasn't even left behind. Well, he was left behind because he wasn't ready. If he would have said to Doe, I had these feelings to leave, but I don't want to leave. I want to leave with you. I want to lay down my life like you're preparing to do, because they were making the uniforms at that time, or maybe they even had them. But they talked about it a number of times, I'm sure, after I left. And because that would have been the nature of Doe to do, even in person with everybody. I would think that probably happened as well, which didn't happen when I was there. We talked about it as a group 2 times that while I was still there, and implied it way back during the Cocoon movie, which I talked about before, which was about 1985, I think. Anyway, so so I just wanted to say that about that. Yes, Mark and Sarah were instructed to publish their book. It was like they made a book that was bound in a different way from it's not the traditional book binding. I think it was one of those plastic binders. I'm not positive about it. But it had a blue cover. So if you ever hear anybody talk about the blue books, Carlin might still have some. I think I have pictures of the pages, and I compared them with the other one, and the copyright page was different. And there might have been a couple other minor differences, but other than that, they seem to be identical. And that book is downloadable on the Heaven's Gate website for free, and I also send people the packets for no charge. And you can also download audios on Carlin's Heaven's Gate for shared page. For shared. F4 is the number 4, numeral 4, shared.com. And I think you can download one at a time, or you can pay to download a bunch of them. But you're not paying Carlin for them. You're just paying for shared people. And I send those also to people in the packets. You just write to my email address if you want that information. SawyerHG@yahoo.com. Okay, so let me go down to the chat room again. Fox and Barrett says he has a 60 Minutes interview on his channel where he discusses it briefly if he doesn't address it. Yeah, good. Thank you for telling him about that. Yeah, because I go into more detail about everything. It was actually, a lot more than well, not really. I mean, I gave you the summary. It's accurate, but there's just more to say about it. Anyway, so and Fox and Barrett says I should be one of the top posted views. If not, Sawyer, Heaven's Gate, and 60 Minutes would be good place to look. From what I understand, it was something that occurred shortly after Mexico. He has explained many times in comment replies and in live streams. The short answer, this is Jeff saying it, the short answer, I think, is he failed his task and didn't feel worthy of staying, despite Doe not asking him to leave. Yeah, I guess there's some degree of not feeling worthy to. I told Doe that I'd be a hypocrite because I wasn't recovering. And he offered me a task to try to overcome it and to be partners with Melody as an overseer again. And I didn't. I told him I couldn't do that task. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I guess I have to leave. And he said, okay, give the phone to somebody else in the craft. And then he told Norodi to tell everybody that was in that room that not to try to talk Soyoti out of leaving, that he knows what he's doing. Okay, so then Fox and Barrett show feelings of inadequacy are often motivators to leave a situation. It's why divorce happens. It's why we change careers or go to college, etc. Did you have a favorite check partner? Jay Pollock asks. Well, I definitely felt like I had some check partners that I just worked better with. Let me put it that way. And that was Cerroti. I was partners with him the most, which was pretty hard for him, I'm sure, because he was so quick. But it was good for him because he needed to overcome finishing people's sentences and things like that. And I'm slow. You can see I'm kind of a slow talker, thinker. I'd be interested to, then Jay Pollock says, I'd be interested to hear more about that halfway house situation with Flexodi and Abelodi. Okay, now Flexodi and Abelodi, I mean, there were a number of different halfway situations. But Flexodi and Abelodi, let's see, I'm not sure what I said about that before. I think I told you that Abelodi had been was a childhood sweetheart of the woman that was named Lorraine, was the vehicle's first name, and when Lorraine left, she was one of the first ones that joined from the meeting in North Hollywood, California, the first private meetings that happened at the meditation groups in North Hollywood. Anyway, and but she left in about 1984, I want to say. 3 or 4, I think. And so she went back to Rolla, Missouri, and where her husband where her son, I think, still has the farm, and ran into the individual that's name is Abelodi, and I don't know what his vehicle's name was, but he became ABL-ODY. He chose that name, I think, Abel, and so Doe made him Abel-Odi. Anyway, but when they joined, they rejoined when that happened. They rejoined because we put Doe made the Beyond Human tapes in 1992, and put them up on satellite dish. And anybody that they had contact with of the dropouts, they told them how to find it. And some found it just by accident because whatever reason they had satellite service. One person even in Venezuela, Juan Odi, actually saw it because he had been in the classroom early and then he left the classroom and he was in Venezuela and he saw the Beyond Human tapes being played. They were uplinked to satellite and then you needed a satellite dish for it to watch it. Anyway, so when they saw that, there was also like a PO box that they could write to as a part of that. And so some people did write to it, and we corresponded with those people. And so they rejoined, but they were in their 80s at that point. Their vehicles were over 80 years old each. I think the same age. And Doe said that Abel Odi was very sweet, but him and Flex Odi, they've been away from Abel Odi was never in the classroom, and Flex Odi was in the classroom early on. But we became so much more of a tight knit crew at that time. And our focus was going public again in 1992. And so Doe was exploring that and trying different things. And so we really needed people to be able to keep up with all the procedures and whatever, we couldn't have like somebody having a problem with a lesson that was causing the forward motion of a task, because we all worked in partnerships. And so if you were assigned a task to do a writing, well, not a writing task, but doing any task. I mean, let's say take a car to the shop to get a brake job done, okay? And then when you got there, they told you that it needed something else to pass inspection, okay? And you didn't have instructions to get that done. So let's say you had a partner that would think, well, I don't know if it would be right to get that done because we didn't have instructions to do that, when the other partner might think that it would be right to do it. And so they would call the craft and see if they could talk to overseers. And if they weren't able to talk to overseers, they would have to make a choice on whether, T&O would have that fixed. And when it would come to safety, they would have always wanted it to be fixed. But that didn't mean that a student couldn't think that they didn't have the right to make that decision without T&O's information. So in other words, like if people hadn't kept up with having more of a sense of when there are places to take a chance on a positive. That was a saying that T&O had to help us with making choices sometimes when they weren't about. And this can apply to a lot of things. Pretty much anything. You take a chance on a positive, and going with what your partner thinks was a lesson that we come out of that, instead of like holding your ground. Now, some people are going to have a harder time holding their ground, and I'm not accusing Flexody of this. I'm not saying this isn't the accurate example pertaining to Flexody and ableody, not at all. But it was true that Doe said that they weren't able to keep up with the classroom and what the classroom had become. And there was somebody else that had that experience too, with it was a new member of the group in 1991, I think it was, or maybe two, before we moved to California again to make the Beyond Human series. The Beyond Human series was shot in a warehouse in Orange County, San Clemente, I think, or Laguna Hill. No, maybe Laguna Hills. I don't know if I got that mixed up with someplace else. Anyway, so right, Flexody was Windody's vehicle's mother. That's true. So that's when Flexody and Ableody, those said, should go back to Arkansas, and that they would be used to help with the upcoming task that we were preparing for of going out on the road. At that time, we already knew that there was a plan that on January 1st, 1994, we were going to drive away with our newly outfitted vans and camping gear and all that in order to hold public meetings again. We did 2 trial public meetings in November, and I did one of those with Junodi. Junodi and I did one of those, and I was taken out of my anti-craft task and flown over to Dallas to do that, and Checody did, no, not Dallas, to Denver. I stayed with Rick Odie and Jen Odie, and then Chuck Odie and Glenn Odie, I think it was, or maybe it was Alex Odie, I'm not positive, did a meeting in Dallas in November. That's in the Heaven's Gate book. You can see all the meetings that were done in 1994. But so they were used by one or more of the groups, but not my group. Didn't stop in Arkansas, because we would do a meeting in an area where Doe would tell us to head to as the first city, and I think Dallas might have been one of the first cities we headed to, and Albuquerque and Tucson, and it was the group that I was with. It was my task. I was overseer task with Melody at that point, and Czech Odie also around that time, and then eventually even Odie, and then we went up to Canada. We went to Portland, did a meeting, and then we did a meeting up in Seattle area, combined with another group that we rendezvoused with, and then we went up to Vancouver, British Columbia, and couldn't get it together. Couldn't get, I think that we ran out of money by that time. And so Doe asked us if we wanted to keep on going, and we did. And so if he wanted us to, and so we started actually asking for help wherever we wanted to. We'd go into restaurants and ask for food, help. We didn't ask for money from anybody. we were to ask for our needs: food, some place to take a shower, lodging, and sometimes we stayed in churches and where visiting monks and nuns would stay and things like that. Where they had a facility to handle 10 or 12 people. And like in Chicago, we did that in the west side of Chicago, in the suburbs. Anyway, but Destody, like Jeff says, which I don't think I read aloud, says, in my imagination, Sawyer and Destody were the best check partners. And I was check partners with Destody on 1, 2, 3 occasions for probably weeks each time, maybe months, maybe a few months each time. But we changed partnerships quite a bit. So it wasn't. I mean, sorority I was the partner with the most for the longest period of time. I mean, I liked being partners with Chakoti on several occasions, 3 different occasions, because she's such a pleasant person to be around. Junodi as well. I was partnered with her a little bit, maybe just one time, but I was a task partner with her, even though our craft partners were different. See, we would have partnerships if there were 2 students that don't want to do a certain task, which was make videos. In the case with Junodi and I, he partnered us together during the time that I was not at my out-of-craft task. And then while she was an in-crafter most of the time, and so she had Chakoti as a partner a lot of the time, and they were overseers of the Nutrilab. And the same with, I think, but with Chakoti, I was a partner round the clock, but she had a task partner that was Junodi when I was at my out-of-craft task, because she was an in-crafter also. Part of the reason Chakoti was an in-crafter might not have been the only reason, was because they didn't want any trouble with her status in the United States, because she was from Canada, from the Edmonton area. Her vehicle, I'm talking about. Chakoti is the name of the soul that took over the vehicle, and that the vehicle cooperated with. Chakoti stands for check. That has to do with when we had 12-minute checks, where every 11 minutes you would stand on a certain spot in a tent, waiting for the phone to ring if T and Do were out of pocket and they had instructions and they wanted to talk to somebody. And so the 2 people on Central would pick the person, one of the 4 people that was standing there for that minute, offering their services, and to go run and tell somebody to come to the phone in the camp when we were living outdoors. That started, but that also continued to indoors with that same system. And so that was called checking, and you were always be checking with your partner before you did things. Like, this is a good time to use the restroom. You weren't asking permission to use the restroom, because you didn't need to get that from your partner. But you wanted to know if it was a good time to use the restroom, or the bath chamber is what we called it. We didn't call it restroom. They changed terminology because changing everything about us actually made our reality more focused on everything that came from T and Do's minds. Okay, I'm going to go back to the chat room. I see there's some new activity there. So yes, a mother and daughter were in the classroom together. Let me go back up to that. Yeah, I was fine with Destori being my check partner, but I mean I like Destori fine. You know, I mean he's my brother. You know, not just because he's in a black vehicle. I don't call him a brother. You know, I call all my classmates. You know, we didn't talk in terms of brothers and sisters. We did that for the world a little bit in the 90s, where one like Logodi was called Brother Logan when he was dealing with like the hardware store when we were trying to build like satellite dishes, stands for satellite dishes. I was his partner, and we used Brother Logan and Brother. I don't even know that I needed a name because I didn't actually deal with anybody. So I don't remember if I was Brother Sawyer. I guess I would have been Brother Sawyer. But we referred to each other as Soyodi and Logodi. I was Soyodi. Anyway, so but those names were primarily for the classroom, although they used those names to identify themselves in the exit videos. Yes, Jay Pollock says that you mentioned you and Destori worked together in a country club or something. Oh, but before I answer that, so it was a little bit, for Flexodi and Ableodi, it was a little bit of a halfway situation. I guess you could look at it that way. But it's not the way I normally talk about the halfway is. And so if you were referring to like Branodi's and Annie Odie's situation, or the time where Alex Odie and Song Odie were in the halfway situation, or Code Odie for a brief time, and Code wasn't among the 38, and his vehicles passed away, and I believe Flex Odie and Able Odie's vehicles are passed away now too, since. But I don't know that I'm not sure where I think I got that from Pip Odie, but I'm not sure exactly. So I could be wrong about that. I'm going to leave that at that. They'd be over 100 years old now, definitely. So I don't know if they, Right, so they didn't rejoin the classroom after that 1994 thing. So I don't know what relationship they had with Doe and crew after I left and after we came back from the 1994 public meetings in September of, in early September of 1994. Okay, so yes, we worked at the Tascosa Country Club in the northern part of Amarillo, Texas. I've told stories about that in the past. How they mistook me and Destody with the names. The one person, the food and beverage director, called me Tom and called him Robert a time or two that I heard. And he's in a black vehicle. How we got mixed, and we kept separate. We didn't go together to the job because T and Doug didn't want us to appear to be related in any way because they didn't want any link back to this being a cult. Okay, so I'm going to go to DCMSS. This person says the eon of the Nazarene is done. Then says, and he put this in capital letters, so I guess he's shouting it. Saturn and Jupiter shall end his teachings. We oppose your master. Then you put that in small caps, small letters. We oppose your master. Someone told me in my dreams to stay away from you. Who is she? Well, I don't know, some discarnate or some Luciferian posing as a fallen angel soul. That's who would tell you that. Then it says, okay, I'm not going to let you, I'm just not going to read all this stuff. What's your point? Oh, I think I know who this is. Okay, well, that's all right. I remember speaking with you. I guess you made your choice. That's the way it goes. T and Do are not in the abyss. We are in the abyss. And that's where everything is going. That's when everything goes back to dust, then we're all in the abyss. The vehicles are, but the abyss is referring to under the earth, the bottomless pit, right? That's what that's referring to. So how can T and Do be in there? Why would they be in there? Why would they be? You're right. That would be what was taught as hell. Why would they be in hell? They are one in the casual. Oh, I see what you're saying. Is okay that we are powerful. I did. Yes. All right. Well, that's fine. Good luck. Good luck. Jeff says, now it gets interesting. You made your choice. Yes, I was speaking with this person, if it's the one I think it is, for some time, for years, through, I forgot, I'm going to say she because that's how I remember the person, as being in a she-gendered vehicle. But not that I ever saw the person's real face or anything. So maybe I'm wrong totally about that. It doesn't matter. But I remember that this person told me that they had a spirit guide that had helped them a lot. And I didn't have anything to say about it. I don't think I tried to say that spirit guide was related to the next level or not. I take the attitude that it might be. They might be picking up on a relationship that a member of the next level had with the individual, and that whatever they're going through, that's their lesson step potentially. Okay, I am a man as a male, so okay, that's clear. They took their lives. Then Jeff says, what does that mean? Then DCM88 says, no, we are many in diverse chaos. Yeah, I know you are in diverse chaos. The spirit world is a place of total chaos. I mean, it's got an organization as well. In terms of it's a feeding frenzy of spirits on the human vehicles. That's the way it really is. On their energy, they're trying to get humans to act in human ways and not overcome those human ways. And then you're saying that Baphomet is our dark mother. Well, I recognize that's one of the other terms for Beelzebub, and but you're seeing this. I want to try to help you a little bit. You're androgynous. I'm glad. Good for you. Maybe you've overcome your sexuality. That's a great thing. But overcoming sexuality without a connection off the planet leaves you on the planet. That's the bottom line. Everything you're saying is related to being on this planet and staying on this planet, right? So, and even going to another planet isn't a solution if that planet is still filled with human behaviors and ways. Because the human condition is a mammalian condition. We're all animals. And so, but we have the choice to not be animals. Now, we can think that we're not animals because we think that we're not animals. Because we're not giving into killing other people, or, like some animals do with one another, like a predator does, or like fish can eat other fish and all that. And but we can prey on humans, though, to take them over, to try to get them to do things that we want them to do. And so we can still be a predator. That's a human condition. Next level members are not predators. And they're also not victims. They're individuals for the first time because they don't have any discarnates telling them what to do or trying to influence them to do their things, like even influencing them to believe a certain way. See, what influences of this world will never teach how to behave in the ways of a member of the next level because they don't understand it. They don't understand that it's the next level's behaviors and ways, because all they can tune into is the human characteristics and the human beliefs that keep them humans. And that's why the Christians, the most staunch Christians now, the evangelicals and the born-againers are, same kind of group, I think, are talking about family values as being, and earning and getting rich as being demonstrating that you've been blessed by God. The opposites of what Jesus taught. That shows you that if you're putting the family on a pedestal, or if you're putting wealth on a pedestal, if you're putting race on a pedestal, if you're putting spiritual ideas on a pedestal, if you're putting your own self on a pedestal, so that you are your own God, you are a God because you believe you are, then you are actually committing suicide to the degree that you're doing that, and anybody refuses to not do that anymore. Now, I'm not accusing DC M88 of all that. I'm just talking about the generalities of that. You're going to make me work here, DC88. You like ancient Christianism? Well, if you like ancient Christianism, then you have to like what Jesus said. And Jesus said that a lot of things that I don't know how you could say that you're against Doe, my master, in those teachings, and also like ancient Jesus teachings. There's a breakdown there because it's the same thing. I don't know how you're seeing it differently. I don't know what year that is. Who are you delivering the message from? All right, you all are, and maybe be still and listen. That's okay. I don't mind. I got to go back and see. Okay, you asked me Corazon versus Baphomet. Who's more powerful? I don't actually. The only way I know those names is Corazon. I know it from you. Oh, Jay Pollock is saying that. Okay, sorry. Oh boy. So we serve temple of blood. So does that mean you do blood sacrifices? Like, people have other people with you? Because, David Icke did an interview of, I don't know if you respect anything that he's done. I'm not saying I respect everything he's done. I respect some of the things he's done. And one of them is when he had the interview with Credo Mutwa. Now, Credo Mutwa is a high priest in one of the countries in Southwest Africa, I think I want to say. And he had an experience to where he was in an underground facility of some sort with space aliens. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. You can go look it up. I put it in I just typed it into the chat room, his name. It was a very interesting story. How he was taken to some, he was hit with a beam of light, maybe it was a blue beam, I'm not sure. And he couldn't control his vehicle. And it lifted him up, as the way I understand it. Remember, I might be getting it mixed up with somebody else. But he ended up someplace underground, I think, was the idea, or inside some kind of structure or cave or something like that. And but I had the impression there was some modernness to it where he was. And anyway. And he was told that they smeared gold on their bodies for health purposes, that helped, allowed their bodies to live longer. Now, Doe said that the bodies that the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls had were designed to live a lot longer than human bodies live now. And so the records that talk about Adam living for 900 something years might have been accurate, might have been actually literal. And a lot of people lived the hundreds of years then. Well, I don't know if a lot of people did, but a lot of the people mentioned in that genealogy that Moses wrote down, because maybe a lot of people didn't. Maybe they had very short lifespans, except for the ones that the next level was working with the most. Just thought of that now. Anyway, so the reason I was bringing that up was because since the way the story goes, the fallen angels, after they were mating with, in some way, may have been test tube babies, with humans on Earth, but I think they were having, I think they were probably having sex. They knew that daughters of men is the way they said it, and they birthed giants, the Nephilim, right? Genesis chapter 6. And giants also meant mighty. And Enoch gave a lot of discussions about how they were, the same individuals were teaching humans like how to use herbs for health and things like that. But the next level wasn't ready for them to depend upon. They wanted them to have more of a relationship with them for help, for their problems and their vehicle's health and all that. But see, that developed the arts that was considered to be then witchcraft, but it's not witchcraft now. And Tian-Do used herbs and spices and homeopathics even, and Do did, and then cleansing diets and vitamins. While T was in a vehicle, we used vitamins and we had protein drinks. We were trying to do like a liquid diet fast. It was also for lessons, but because if somebody had a problem with it, they would have to overcome it for the time period that, or try to overcome it. Like fight back the thoughts that didn't like the taste of it or whatever it was. And T and Do were always mixing and matching things so that they would come up with something that tasted good. They didn't give us something that tasted terrible. Except to some people it might have, like when Do added okra to the diet, when we were on the transfiguration diet, boy, I would gag when I would eat okra because it was so slimy. And so I got to take a break for 1 minute. What? Oh, is that what that is? Oh, shoot. I think it was in my bag. Just take this little thing here. Yeah. Pull it up. No battery. There's this one. Where's that coming from? wish we'd make more. I wish you'd make enough for me in there. Yeah, put a little bit in there. Do it fast. Oh man, I had this amplifier that I left on. I guess maybe it's fried now. But it was hard to find it. We thought it was a smoke alarm. I don't know if you can hear it over there. Where you are, way over there, if you're still here. All right, DCM888, you want to talk to me through email? I'd love to. Deliciously yummy. Okay. The blood, okay. Well, I know, raw meat is probably the best meat for you to eat. If it's raised well, right? I just hope it's not human. And I hope it's not, the whole idea of shedding blood, well, is related to the fact that the next level doesn't need human bodies on their spacecrafts in the next level. They grow bodies like on a vine to adulthood. And that's what the souls take over. So it was designed that the bodies were going to die. And the blood of the human, for the biology, is kind of like the mind of how everybody has it, right? I don't know if insects have the equivalent of blood, but I think they do have something like that. But yeah, the graduation does require laying down one's life at some point. And but it takes but Tiendo divided the classroom in the human kingdom to being, but the graduation part of it, the human kingdom, for those vehicles that were groomed for that graduation potential, which all vehicles can be groomed for. I mean, I'm not saying they all can be, but I'm saying it doesn't necessarily have to be, the Chinese or the Japanese or the North American Indians, or the red men or the black African or the brown South Americans, or all these different skin tones doesn't have anything to do with it. I mean, there's all kinds of colors of vehicles in the next level, Doe said, but certain strains are worked with more of a primary focus at any given time. And so Tiendo talked about there's three trimesters to the birth. And the first trimester was during the Moses part of the experiment. And then the second trimester was the Jesus time of the experiment. And he brought the graduation requirements of leaving the human family behind. And overcoming our sexuality so that we're like the members of the next level that don't marry and are not given in marriage anymore. and they make themselves they regain their virginity, which Tiendo taught. Well, it didn't mean that virgins were going to be the only ones that graduated into heaven. It meant that they were going to recover their virginity, so they were giving all their love upward to all the members of the next level, instead of linear to fellow members of the human kingdom. Now, Kathy Southwestern, I don't agree that DCM88 is trolling. I'm not sure if DCM88 has any questions or is open to some of my thoughts, or not my thoughts, but Tiendo's teachings. I'd like to know if I'd like to ask that person now, and we can talk about it in an email. If since you said you are against my master, why? I want to know why. Specifically. Don't give me generalizations, please. Doesn't do any good. I need to know specifically reasons. And so, I mean, for us to have a conversation about it, I need that. But if you don't want to give it to me, that's up to you. But we won't be able to communicate much unless I understand that. Because otherwise, it can be just a waste of time. So you're just leaving a message. I'm nothing, just a messenger. All right. I don't, I haven't found any value in your message. So I don't mean to put you down by saying that. Everybody's got what's of value to them when it's of value to them. And this is, I tell people about Tiendo a lot of times, and they don't jive with, they don't like what I have to say. They don't, find the value of what I have to say to them. So it's the same way. But you're saying you like ancient Christianism and Gnostics is like you're just not seeing Tiendo's teachings and how the Gnostics is talking about the secret information. And I'm talking about the secret information. Tiendo provided all the clues to be able to see all the mysteries of the revelations is the revealing of the secrets of the information, that was hidden information. That's what Jesus said would happen when he came back. And he did come back, but he took a new vehicle. Then Jeff says, G.G. Allen fan I see. G.G. Allen fan I see. Oh, okay. I was born on, Virgo with goat and Scorpio. Pollock, who are you delivering? All right. In about 300 years shall rise. This is about creating a dark empire. This is not about race. A humble slave to 333 and his abyss. Yeah, see, I can't, I don't know how, I'm not going to block the person. That person I blocked, the only person I blocked so far was that person who would insist on saying that, Marshall Applewhite was a murderer and all that, at least this person was, trying to communicate a little bit, even though I don't relate to hardly anything they're saying. But I feel like I do have something to say about it. And you never know when somebody could, not hear it right away, maybe, but maybe something you might say, that Tiendo said or taught, they may, something may happen in the world or whatever, and they may get a sense that, wow, maybe I've been off track in that score or this score. Maybe this is the real deal, You never know when that can happen. So I don't want to turn anybody away unless, they're totally saying gobbledygook. Yeah, I mean, some people just want to express themselves also, get things off their chest about what they believe. And so the person was doing that, and I would prefer not to have all that. I would just rather have the bottom lines if he wants to just tell me, what the bottom lines are, because it does kind of waste time. Then Jay Pollock says, I had a dream about the next level. It was a normal-sized humanoid, but the face had no nose, eyes, or mouth. It was drawing me almost inside of it. But not in a harmful manner. It was drawing me almost inside of it, but not in a harmful manner. Wow. Very interesting. That's very interesting. Yep, I don't doubt that. And I was trying to think, as I read that, somebody else told me about the same kind of experience. I'm pretty sure. With a dream where the people had no faces. I wonder if it was that individual, what's his name on YouTube? I haven't communicated with him for probably about 10 years or so. Can't remember much else, sadly, says Jay Pollock about after that. But that's very interesting, though. Thanks for sharing that. Sawyer, what's the significance of the channel name? Oh, well, I started a band. I thought I was starting a band that was called Third Stone People's Movement. And so that's what that stands for, 3SPM. And the only person in that band is me. I ended up making multi-track recordings or overdubbing, tried my hand at that. Yeah, Buswa says, then sounds like you were dreaming of transferring your mind to a new vessel. Well, that's what actually, I was thinking that too, Buswa, that, that one way of looking at that dream would be like, there's a next level vehicle waiting for you to put the face on it. That's what I was feeling actually when I was reading that. And then the Buswa, I didn't like them to say it. And then Buswa then said it, because it was drawing you. And you know how Jesus taught that you need to be drawn to the next level? Didn't they say that? Nobody comes to the Father unless the Father is the gift. When they give us the gift of recognition, that draws us to recognizing the reality of the next level. That's drawing us into the next level to have that recognition. But they make us work for it. They give us little boosts, and those little boosts can go a long way. It's a little boost, you know. It looks like a little boost, but it can be a very big boost, and it can sustain us for a long time. But it can also dwindle and become not significant at all. Yeah, any dreams that you get that that are giving you instructions to do anything or say anything or are not from the next level. But giving you, showing you options or showing you what the task is of building your house on a rock, like Jesus taught, meaning the rock being, in this case, dough. You know, I mean, whatever it is. You know, I'm not saying what the. I've had a number of people tell me different dreams. One was they were painting a bridge, and they were on a lower deck, and they thought that dough was on the top deck, something like that. And then let's see if I know another one. There was another one or two, but I don't remember them right at the top of my head now. Right, Boussois, he never murdered anyone. Everyone he led made the conscious decision to leave this human kingdom themselves. That's right, that's absolutely true. It's true that they wouldn't have left if they didn't have an older member with them to help them in that direction of leaving the human kingdom. Sure, see, that's where you can have somebody say that he led them to, and you know, in that to that in that way, yes. But but actually, but the word led is what needs to be expanded upon for other people. What does it mean that he led them? And I would ask people that if they said that from now on. Well, usually I don't do that. Usually I tell them what I think. I don't give them a chance to tell me what they think. Well, sometimes I do. But you know what? So leading and brainwashing, right, would be the same kind of thing, right? Leading them to do something terrible to themselves. But well, maybe that had something to do with why Doe wasn't the first one to do it, to lay down his life. He was in the second group. maybe even the beginning of the third group. So, because it'd be like, imagine like the way a human would do it is they would leave first, and then expect their followers to, do what they did. And then you could say that they were all led, right? But for people to leave before him, how did he get them to do that, right? Because they didn't know that he wouldn't get instructions last second to change. But he knew that he wasn't going to get instructions last second to change. But they might have that doubt. That would be an avenue for the lower forces to come in. When the assignments were made of who was going to leave, because they had that all spelled out, when that would have been the time when they would see that, hey, Doe's not leaving. So then that would be an open door for all those individuals that were leaving before him to think, well, what if this isn't right? He's leaving. He's not leaving. Is there something wrong with that picture? Is that a red flag? Right? That to some people that would be a red flag. It would be a red flag in my mind if I had any doubts at all about what I was doing. Now doubts can be subtle. But if anybody's having any conscious thinking that this isn't the place to be, seeing that would really kind of solidify it. And then it'd be also a test for all the other students that left after they did. They open the door. That can open the door to people thinking, what if Doe doesn't actually drink the stuff? Is he? That could have been a thought that could have attacked some people. Which would have been another, had he left first, then they would have already known that he did it. And that and how he did it. So they wouldn't have opened those doors. Those are just two doors that I could see opening up that required them then to make another choice. And when you have choices, you're not being led blindly. It's only when you're a blind follower that becomes a negative. They had choices, so that means they were a seeing follower, conscious follower. I'm glad this came up. I'm really glad this came up. Then Jay Pollock says, yeah, maybe, unless you, okay. Booswa says, you already went through that one. And then Jay Pollock says, it was silent the whole time, but I just knew it about the next level. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. It's like it comes with that sense of understanding that that's who it is. I mean, I believe that's the case, but it's always good to keep your guard up that there might come a time where some can be tricked, like maybe not so much the way you're saying, and I'm not implying that you were tricked. I don't think you were, but because there's no evidence of it. It didn't tell you to do anything terrible to anybody, or it didn't imply, it didn't judge anybody else. It didn't have any sensuality in it. Right? I mean, it was like it was very kind of a next level way of thinking, of having a vehicle that's humanoid but doesn't have a face, because Tiendo taught that you don't become an individual until you become a member of the next level. That's when humans become an individual for the first time. Because before then, they are many faces are coming through each of our physical faces. All our ancestors, all those lifetimes are all coming through our genetic code into our vehicles. And that's what presents us as what we think and believe. And it's all the choices that were made in the current lifetime to continue those faces as part of our identity. I'm not saying that there's something wrong with continuing the faces of that identity, but I mean, like, let's say, for instance, your ancestors all smoked tobacco like chimneys. Okay, so when you come into this life, you're gonna have that genetic propensity of that weakness. I'm looking at it as a weakness because of, not that tobacco can't be used medicinally, and not that something can't be positive about smoking it, but with a lot of things, too much is detrimental to the vehicle. But so then when the person was faced with the data that was showing that people that were very addicted to tobacco were having problems with their throat, their lungs, their gums, their more than other people. And so then when we are faced with that information, then when we see that and we choose, we say to ourselves, you know what, I believe that, and I'm not gonna smoke anymore, or I'm gonna quit, or I'm gonna replace it with something else that's more positive, or but that's making a choice, and that becomes then our face, and that's taking control of the vehicle. So our face then is being built for the first time into the soul. It's actually stored, that effort and the recognition of what the effort was about, even, that it was a substance that you're trying to overcome feeling the need for and the want for. That all becomes part of the person, the new individual that's being born, the butterfly. So the whole process of that is the metamorphosis, changing our biology and changing. So you're changing your biology by doing that, by getting rid of a lot of substances. Our biology changes and can grow to not want those substances anymore, even though you may still have. I had the most fun. I always associated going fishing with drinking beer, and so I can't never go fishing without drinking beer. That could be a way that we imprint the memory of that, so that we actually then are passing that on to future generations, because it becomes part of our genes, both the thinking and the effect on our physical bodies. To whatever degree it is impressed. If we just have a beer every once in a while, it's not going to be any big deal. But if we become a beer alcoholic to where we have to have a certain amount of beers every day, or we're not happy, that's going to have its negative ramifications. And so that's something to be overcome, along with everything else in the world that can become an addiction. It's a difficult process, but it's doable. That's the thing. Difficulty doesn't mean that it's not doable. If it wasn't doable, then we wouldn't have the choice to continue to do it. Because I think the human vehicles would need to be recycled to try to produce vehicles that were more positive minded about things that they couldn't prove, for instance, whatever. Okay, so then there's a question from Jay Pollack. Do you think Livodi and Janodi were the final two? I think we know Livodi was for sure, but in a doc, Nancy was saying Alex Odie might have been final two. I don't know what that means. If you can point me to where that terminology came from, final two. Oh, the final two. Oh, right, who laid down their vehicles. Yeah, that's my understanding. It was them. Yeah, I don't know why Nancy says that. It may have been so. I don't know. It's possible. There's something that wow. Think about how Livodi would have been potentially tested. But I don't think it really was a test for her at that point. I mean, the tests are always there, whether it was something that would occur to her or not. Because we're not responsible for the thoughts we have. We're responsible for the thoughts we keep, and we entertain, and we build and believe and act out. That's what we're responsible for. So even if somebody has the thought, you know, God wants me to do something bad to somebody, uh, um, if they block it, and then whenever that thought comes back, they label it as a evil thought, and then they keep on blocking it, so they don't even hear that thought anymore. Uh, then they're not evil for having all those thoughts. Can't continue to bombard them. So it doesn't matter what it is. And by entertaining them, uh, um, give them any stock, or even use them to judge ourselves with. But certainly not, act out those kind of negative thoughts about ourselves or anybody else. Then Jay Pollock says, Livery is very impressive, helping everyone go through the transition ahead of herself. Yeah, I don't know how they arrived at the order, but I believe that Doe probably came up with it. I don't know that. Well, I don't know. He might have. There was something that somebody said that made me think that students had choice in that regard, and that would make sense. That would make sense, a lot of sense. But I know what Doe would have done if the students were given the choice, uh, and he would have probably even talked to each person about it. He would have been thinking about that with asking question of T if this seemed right, so that he would feel confident that the order was with T's blessing, because he had a very real communication with T. It wasn't just like uh, it was more concrete than like when somebody has a dream or something that, and they feel like it's from the next level, or from Doe, or from God, even, whatever our terminology can be, because it's not just limited to dreams are potentially used throughout the human kingdom by the next level. But the lower forces can also use dreams. And maybe there is also some garbage collection that happens automatically somehow, some kind of filtering, or I don't know, just, like computers, they used to call it garbage collection. The Apple, the first Apple Mac, a little picture on the screen of a trash can, I think, with somebody, indicating that that's what it was doing when you shut it off. Kind of needed, I guess, put memory back into wherever its places were in the database. I don't know what exactly it was doing, but I'm feeling like I don't want to go 4 hours tonight, and I think I covered the things that I I wanted to just bring up the fireballs. Well, actually, I should finish that off with if it follows the same pattern that it followed the previous years, which you can read about at the back of my book. Maybe I'll even put a summary of it in the description of this. Since I don't have anything from T and Do to talk about the fireballs, I'll put what I wrote about it, which were my observations and some of what I discovered in 2017. That started in 2013. So I'll put that in the description, but it has to do with the 40 years from 1973 to 1970 to 2013 as being like an hour of time in the next level, and being the hour that T and Do were present for. Well, or the time period before the next seal opening and or trumpet sounding. No, the trumpet sounding would happen before that, right? Because the sounding, I guess, I'm not sure. But it's all very well in the ballpark of the timing in the seven seals and the seven angels' trumpet soundings in the Revelation, which I've wrote about quite a bit and tried to nail down in accordance with different world events since the early 1900s. That's when I think those seven angels started to sound. And even before that, with the first experience which I attributed to being related to the, well, I'm not going to talk about it right now. So, but I'll go through that. Maybe next time I'll go through that a little bit. I don't know. I guess that sound wasn't in my head. I guess I told you that. All right. I'm just going through the questions again. Never eat okra? No, eat the okra. And I actually learned to like it. Well, I won't say like it. I learned to eat it without gagging. Okay. And so since I did that, maybe that's all the overcoming I needed from it. But when you're in a classroom with older members, and they'll probably give you something else that that will. Okra might be the thing that everybody loves, like potatoes. I don't know if anybody doesn't like potatoes, but maybe somebody does. But so in that classroom, so it's not the okra itself that's anything wrong with. It was just being, and Doe didn't keep it on the menu very long because I guess maybe he didn't like it that well either. Maybe it was on the menu for a couple of weeks, for maybe once, or maybe it was a couple months or 3 or 4 months, but only like once a week that we would have it. DCM88 said, I feel like a beast takes control of me. Oh, that's very yeah. I I I understand, Kathy Southwestern, that it's upsetting. Um, oh, I see you lost your question. This is why I need to go back to this. George Hope says, "Get your mind in your in your vehicle." That's what we taught the parakeets. She gave us that actually. Get your mind in your vehicle, she would say to us. Snake is my mom's zodiac sign, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm out. I can't deal with this disrespect right now. Kathy Southwestern said that. All right. So I think I saw everything. I guess Kathy, I'll have to. I'm sorry. I'll try to respond to your questions in Facebook uh, on the messenger service there. Since you didn't get a chance to ask what you wanted to ask because I was spending so much time on DCM 88's questions. I see that DCM 88 was sorry for that. So, I don't think we should, you know, be sending bad vibes to the person. Everybody has their right to their opinion and beliefs, and a lot of times people are expressing themselves because they do want input, and they have their own battles, and so you know, so I'm gonna think of it as that if DCM 88 wants to communicate with me through SawyerHG@yahoo.com or anywhere else, um, I'll, I'll try to express what's on my mind about whatever you have to say if you came back to this live stream or if you listen to it or anybody listens to it in the future. Because I don't want to rule anybody out from having to go through what they go through. And Jay Pollock says, glad you didn't block DCM 88. It was disruptive but also interesting. Jay Pollock then says, going to start meditating tomorrow. Off to bed. Good night, Sawyer. We'll catch up the first part I missed later. Yeah, good to have you all actually participating in the live stream with me. I appreciate your inputs on perspectives and participation. And I'm glad we had this opportunity, and I hope we have it again. Good night, folks.